Jalen Jacoby is presented by Grey Goose.
Here's Jalen Rose. I'm David Jacoby. We are Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen, what is it that we do?
We make sure that we give the people what they want.
In a draft that promised to be full of trades and surprises, it kinda wasn't. Anthony Edwards went first to the Timberwolves as most expected, and then with the second pick, the Warriors picked James Wiseman, which is interesting because they got some very bad news yesterday. Klay Thompson has what looks to be serious lower leg injury. Jalen, what do you think about Wiseman at 2 and the Warriors' future with this news about Klay?
I believe Wiseman was the correct choice for the Golden State Warriors because one of the things they needed, and we highlighted that on this show, is height. Someone that has the ability to do rim runs, block shots, and just give them that presence down low. And so I believe, regardless of the Klay news, that ultimately Wiseman was the correct choice for the Golden State Warriors at number 2 because he's not going to change, or whoever they draft isn't going to fix the dynamics of, without the Splash Brothers, the Golden State Warriors become one of the teams that hope to make the playoffs in the Western Conference versus a contending team if he's healthy.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously it's never good news when someone gets injured, but this is particularly heartbreaking because Klay was battling back from a previous injury. The Warriors had such hard luck last year. I predicted that this would be the largest turnaround of a winning percentage and record from one season to the next, but without Klay, all of that is in jeopardy. We wish him the best, and we hope there's some good news coming out of the Bay Area, but it does not look good at this moment. Moving on in the draft, our guy, who I consider to be the best prospect in the draft, someone who you did a great sit-down interview with, LaMelo Ball, went number 3 to the Hornets. What do you think about that fit and what he brings to Charlotte?
You know how much I stress this, family. It ain't necessarily where you go, it's when you get there. And I think this is a terrific landing spot for him because Graham became a playmaker for Charlotte last year. Now both of those guys can handle those responsibilities of ball handling, creating. You have a couple of bigs that are finishers in P.J. Washington and Miles Bridges that are going to benefit off the pick and roll ability of LaMelo Ball. And then just playing in Charlotte, hopefully he becomes a superstar caliber player that now creates some relevancy in that market.
I like this for him because it gives him a lot of room to breathe. They've got Terry Rozier and, as you mentioned, Graham in the backcourt, but he's going to find some minutes there, and he's going to get some time to really shine and sort of like not be in the confines of an offense with a lot of scorers around him. Hopefully this will work out for him. I'm predicting big production from him and a Rookie of the Year because he is, as you mentioned, such a good spot for him. Now, Jalen, as the night went on, there was a couple things that were interesting, but who are some picks a little bit later on in the draft that you really liked? I'm going to start with mine, Cole Anthony to the Magic. Now, you remember coming out of high school, Cole Anthony was ranked one of the top players, and I think much like it's one of those players that slipped because of an injury in college. However, he is going to produce really, really well. I love him in Orlando. Who did you like later in the draft?
I love Cole Anthony. Shout out to my brother Greg, his father. I believe this draft was unique overall, Jacoby, because when you look at the lottery, you don't see players from Duke and Kentucky and UNC and Kansas. My sleepers, one in the East, is the Atlanta Hawks and what they were able to do in the draft, but also in the West, Jalen Smith of the Phoenix Suns. We talked about Chris Paul to go with Devin Booker and the young wings that they have along with Ayton. But that young man right there is going to bring a level of physicality and also shooting to the big man spot in Phoenix. Both of those squads, to me, Phoenix and Atlanta, are both teams in their conference that did not make the playoffs this previous year that I anticipate now, based on how they've drafted over the last couple of years and the development of the players on their roster, will firmly entrench themselves into the playoffs this year.
And both Smith for the Suns and Okongwu for the Hawks enter a position where they're not going to be asked to start and take the load because they've got Ayton in Phoenix, and then they've got Clint Capella, who a lot of people forget is on the Hawks. He just didn't play last year and didn't go to the bubble, but they come into really good situations. Those are our three sleepers, but there's other things that happened around the draft, but not necessarily in the draft. There was a lot of movement on the roster of the Philadelphia 76ers. We all thought that Al Horford had an untradeable contract. Well, guess what? That's not the case. He was traded to OKC for Danny Green. They also made a move and got Seth Curry. They're adding Green and Curry some much-needed shooting to the 76ers. What do you think about their moves last night?
The Sixers had a terrific night. I agree with you. And one of the things I must do is bring a level of objectivity to this game. And Daryl Morey is well liked amongst multiple people who do what we do for a living. I could probably say he's done better so far with the Sixers than he did his entire time with the Rockets. How about that, Jacoby? Because if you look back at what he did in Houston, that situation is actually a mess. And they lost their head coach and Mike D'Antoni. As opposed to the Philadelphia 76ers, you talked about freeing that salary cap space with Al Horford, trading Josh, getting shooting as Seth Curry. Danny Green is a 3-and-D kind of guy with championship level experience. But anything that takes place in Philadelphia ultimately is going to hamper. Anything that takes place in Philadelphia is going to be predicated on two people. Is Ben Simmons going to be able to make shots outside of the paint? And is Joel Embiid going to be able to stay healthy? We know that he's going to miss games throughout the regular season, but the last 2 years, once they got to the playoffs, Embiid also missed playoff games. So that's going to be crucial. Those two guys are still going to be the anchor to what they're trying to do, but I think Tobias Harris is going to be a player that flourishes with Doc Rivers as the head coach.
Well, Doc Rivers famously had Austin Rivers on his roster, and now he's got Seth Curry, who most people know but some may not, is Doc Rivers' son-in-law. So he's now had his son and now his son-in-law on his team in the past handful of years. I really think that when you look at the Sixers roster, one thing that they are missing is shooting, and they get that with Green and Curry. I really think that was smart for them. And Richardson sort of played great in Miami, and when they acquired Richardson, I really thought that he would be a 3-and-D type player. Didn't really work out that way in Philly, and I think that they did some good moves here. But one thing we need to mention is what Sam Presti is doing in Oklahoma City. Just look at the picks that this man has amassed. Just look at all these picks. For the next 5 years, they're going to be drafting, if they keep these picks, so many first-round picks. All I know is this, is the Oklahoma City G League team is going to be the best G League team in the history of the G League. If I was on the G League roster right now, I would be very concerned about all the first-round picks that are coming into the system.
One thing I want to say about Daryl Morey and Sam Presti, both of those guys, again, are terrific general managers. And you're going to hear a lot of people parrot the Oklahoma City Thunder having all of those draft picks. But here's what I'll say to you. What would you consider success with those picks? Because I've looked at their team over the last decade, and I don't believe any of those guys are going to be better than Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Paul George, Victor Oladipo. So what are we calling success in OKC?
So
what are we calling success in OKC?
So you and I both know that draft picks are overrated and picks don't play. Success to me is trading those picks for superstar players. That's success if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder. You shouldn't be drafting any of those picks. Just like you amass those, they call them trade assets. Use those assets and turn them into actual established players. That would be success for those picks for Oklahoma City. Now, we do have to mention that the Sixers did draft guest on our show, Tyrese Maxey. So they added Curry, they added Maxey, and they added Green. Shout to Tyrese getting drafted right here. I think that was part of the good night for the 76ers. If I'm a Sixers fan, I definitely feel better today than I did about my team 48 hours ago. Shout to Tyrese Maxey. Now, something else happened. There's all this trades and roster changes and draft picks, but quietly in the background, Bogdan Bogdanović, one of my favorite players, was all ready to do a sign and trade and go to the Bucks, and that along with bringing in Drew Holiday was supposed to solidify Giannis and maybe entice him to sign the max extension. Well, guess what? Bogdan Bogdanović was like, yeah, the whole sign and trade that you set up, there's the sign part that I have to do that I'm not doing. He's now going to enter free agency. What do you think the implications are for the future of Giannis and the Bucks that Bogdan might not be on the roster?
I feel like this deal eventually gets done, Jacoby. It's just him saying, hey, listen, I know that we have an opportunity to do a sign and trade, But if I open up my free agency to other teams, I might be able to get more cash. That's basically what this sounds like to me, him trying to make a business move. But I'll be surprised if he doesn't ultimately end up with the Bucks.
Jalen, you are watching ESPN, but sometimes on this show, we turn into the Cardinals News Network. And there is big news because the Cardinals play Thursday night. They don't just play anyone. They play division rival Seattle Seahawks. And let's talk about Kyler Murray, our guy, because he has now supplanted Lamar Jackson as the best running quarterback in the league with the plays he makes with his legs. Jalen, what do you think about Kyler's mobile ability?
The ultimate dual threat. He can throw a bomb, and he can also run with the best of them. And it seems like he's getting a rushing and a passing touchdown in every game. And they've done a terrific job when you draft a quarterback #1 overall to try to make it as comfortable for him as possible. They got him Cliff Kingsbury, somebody that was going to run an offense that he's familiar with. They have Christian Kirk, somebody that he played with previously. You go out and get DeAndre Hopkins. You keep Larry Fitzgerald. You try to create a run game that's going to be consistent on a weekly basis. And so now Kyler can just go out there, Jacoby, and do his thing. And it's been spectacular to watch.
And D-Hop is, in my opinion, and his, the best receiver in the league. But I'm glad you mentioned Christian Kirk, because you're watching these Cardinals games, Christian Kirk can really take the top off of a defense. He is so fast, and D-Hop, rightfully so, gets all the attention. But without Kirk, you have to wonder if D-Hop is open all the time, because it seems like he can get behind the secondary whenever he wants. Big shout to Christian Kirk, who's been a little bit overshadowed by D-Hop. But we see you here on Jalen and Jacoby. Now, Jalen, it is time to talk about the Seattle defense, because they're not just bad. They are historically bad. Look at these numbers for the Seattle defense. They're shocking. Jalen, what do you think is leading to this poor performance from Seattle on the defensive side of the ball?
A long way from the Legion of Boom. And that poor defense possibly is going to cost Russell Wilson and its explosive offense an opportunity to do some big things this year, Jacoby. When you look at it on paper, and a defense that has Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams obviously has dealt with some injury, you would believe that they'd be substantially better than that. And so you hope to see that improve if you're a Seattle fan, if they're planning on doing anything substantial this season.
Well, remember, let Russ cook? Well, they let Russ cook, and he's turning the ball over. He's been plagued by turnovers. He promises to keep swinging, even though he's been turning the ball over. So we'll see if those swing lead to hits and home runs or more turnovers. But Jalen, I'm about to say something in the world of sports that I'm shocked by. Justin Herbert has a fresher cut than my co-host, Jalen Rose. We'll show you that and much more when we come back. You're watching Jalen and
Jacoby, presented by Grey Goose.
Coming to you live from Pier 17 in the South Street Seaport and brought to you by Chase. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen, it's time for one of our signature segments. Time for Soft Move or Boss Move. We start Soft Move or Boss Move with a reported skirmish between Joe Judge of the New York Giants and the offensive line coach Mark Colombo. Jalen, reportedly it came to blows, and they said it didn't come to blows, but we do know this. Colombo was fired after the fight. Firing your coworker after you got into a verbal or physical argument with them. Soft Move or Boss Move.
It's literally a boss move, because when you're the head coach, the offensive line coach works for you. And the Giants have one of the worst offensive line one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. So it seems like the head coach was challenging the line coach about how they were lackluster in their performance, and it allegedly became a physical altercation. But here's the thing I want to make sure I acknowledge. Jacoby, at what age are men too old to be fighting? Like, how old are these guys to be having a physical altercation, right?
I feel like over 30. If you're over 30, you can't be getting in physical altercations. You're too old. If you're still young and dumb, you can have a crooked nose like myself at the end of it. Jalen, now we're going to move on to something that is just very shocking. You haven't gotten a haircut in like a month, which is really, really disturbing. And now Justin Herbert has gotten a haircut, but he let his strength and conditioning coach cut his hair. Soft move or boss move, letting your colleague cut your hair?
That's a soft move. You got to be really particular, Justin. Come on, young fella. I know you have that youthful enthusiasm and you know it's going to grow back. But that grass on the left looks a lot better than that grass on the right. So I would suggest that if you need some tips in Cali for a barber, holla at your boy.
Jalen has a barber in every major metropolis in the domestic United States. Jalen, you going to show people what you're working with under that hat? You going to give them a reveal? Going to give us a reveal?
No, it's just bad hair day.
It's tough. It's tough. Moving on, RJ Hampton was drafted technically by the Bucks, but he was then moved eventually to the Nuggets. Apparently his dad knew that, took the Bucks hat and then just tossed it. Said, you don't need that. Throwing the hat after the team drafts you, soft move or boss move?
That's a boss move because RJ Hampton went through a lot, Jacoby. He went international to hone his skills. I'm pretty sure initially he hoped that he'd go higher. Once he got picked, Dad wasn't playing those games. We're going to get the right hat in here. We're going to show love to the team that stepped up and drafted us. We ain't showing love to the teams that didn't pick us. We're going to ride with the team that drafted us.
I love it. And also, we had this family photo during the draft. It was Malachi Flynn's family photo. Jalen, soft move or boss move, the outfits in the family photo?
So here's what I want to say to everyone that sees this picture. First off, they have a beautiful family. That picture's a boss move. And I will say this. On this program, we retired what a lot of people call the shirts that the gentlemen are wearing. So if you're somebody on social media or does this for a living or just follows reality, the term that's used to describe that undershirt is outdated. It's archaic. It's retired. Do not use it. It's a terrific family photo.
And finally, we have this. George Clooney once gave every one of his 14 friends $1 million in cash. Soft move or boss move, giving 14 people $1 million.
So this is a boss move, and it just reminds me that I got the wrong friends. I got the wrong friends. Because it seems like when I look down at my phone, everybody trying to get money from me. Not too many people are trying to give me money. Boss move.
I won't even buy Jalen a beer, let alone give him $1 million. Please. I asked Jalen for his Venmo one time. He's like, I don't have one. People are just going to hit me up on it. When we come back, not only do we have the Cardinals facing the Seahawks tonight, we have Gucci versus Jeezy. We're getting you ready for that right after this. Stay tuned. You're watching Jalen and Jacoby. UFC 255, 2 belts on the line. It is Figueiredo versus Perez, and Shevchenko goes up against Jennifer Maia. That all starts at 10 p.m. on Saturday. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen, there's a lot of discussion about the draft, and this team did this and this team did that. What is one team that no one's talking about that you think did a great job yesterday improving their team?
You know I like to go deeper into the box score. And shout to the Miami Heat. I love their draft of Precious. He's going to be a terrific front court player for them. But I want to give love to the Atlanta Hawks. You have Trae Young. You have Cam Reddish. You have DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, and you get a chance to draft Okonwu from USC. He has all of the measurables of Bam Adebayo. So now all of a sudden the Atlanta Hawks, in my opinion, go from being a team that was not in the playoffs to one of the best and most exciting young teams in the Eastern Conference. Shout to the Atlanta Hawks. They're doing a terrific job building their roster.
They really have. And people forget about Hunter and Reddish because there were so many other people that sort of overshadowed them in their draft class, but they're developing well. And you've got Young, Okonwu, and Collins, and Capella. They really have a nice nucleus down there. They have a lot of players in their second or third year ready to make the leap. Jalen, there's a big game tonight between the Cardinals and the Seahawks, but there's also another face-off that we need to discuss, and that is the versus battle between Gucci and Jeezy. This is the first versus battle where there's like real bad blood between the combatants. What do you expect from the battle tonight?
Well, just so you know, I'm so very excited for hip-hop. Shout to Swiss Beats and Timbaland for getting these two gentlemen in the same room at the same time to celebrate both of their catalogs. I'm friends with Jeezy. Gucci's a friend to the show. I'm just happy that we're going to get a chance to celebrate this trap music tonight Atlanta, stand up. It's all about celebrating the catalog, representing the ATL to the fullest. Peace up, A-Town down.
Jalen, I know you spend a lot of your time focused on the NFL and the NBA and the sports world, but I know you also spend a lot of time doing potential versus battle matchups. What is a versus battle that you want to see happen in the upcoming weeks?
So that's a controversial thing, David Jacoby. But here's what I want to say. I want to get Busta Rhymes at E40. That's who I want to see. Busta Rhymes and E40. Both of those guys go deeper into the catalog with their bars. And also they have such longevity in the game in unique styles. Both of those guys I want to see get celebrated.
Enjoy the football game tonight. We will be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. on ESPN to break it all down. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. We always have exclusive content on the podcast.
You're far too kind.